Hello friends, let us now learn about important points about uveitis. So in the uveitis, first we will learn about some classifications which are present for uveitis. So first we have clinical classification of uveitis. So in the clinical classification of uveitis is divided into acute uveitis and chronic uveitis and recurrent uveitis. In acute uveitis, we have sudden symptomatic, and it is acute uveitis occurs if it occurs less than 3 months of age, then we call it as acute uveitis. In chronic uveitis, we have insidious, asymptomatic, and it is present for longer period. Then we have recurrent uveitis. In recurrent uveitis, recurrent episodes within 3 months of interval, more than 3 months, then we call it as recurrent uveitis. Then we have one more classification, which is pathological classification. In pathological classification, we have uveitis is divided into two types: suppurative or purulent uveitis. Second type is non-suppurative uveitis, which again divided into non-granulomatous and granulomatous uveitis. Then we have one more etiological classification. Based on the etiology, uveitis is divided into infective uveitis, immune related uveitis, toxic uveitis, traumatic uveitis, uveitis with non-infectious diseases, and idiopathic uveitis. Then first we will see the anatomical classification. Uveitis, if you see, inflammation of uvea is uveitis. So anatomical classification mainly includes, we have first anterior uveitis. So in the anterior uveitis, there is inflammation of iris to pars plicatum. So anterior uveitis is inflammation of iris to pars plicatum. We call it as anterior uveitis. So this is divided into iritis, that is inflammation of iris only. Then we have iridocyclitis, that is inflammation of iris plus pars plicatum. We call it as iridocyclitis. Then we have anterior cyclitis, which is inflammation of only pars plicatum. Inflammation of only iris is iritis. Inflammation of only pars plicatum is anterior cyclitis. Inflammation of both iris and pars plicatum is iridocyclitis. Then we have second type, which is intermediate uveitis. Intermediate uveitis is consists of inflammation of pars plana, retinoid, and choroid. So this is intermediate uveitis, where there is inflammation of pars plana, retina, and choroid also. Then we have posterior uveitis. In posterior uveitis, there is only inflammation of choroid. Then we have panuveitis, that is inflammation of whole uvea, including iris, pars plicatum and pars plana, and also choroid. So we call it as panuveitis. So this is anatomical classification. Then in the anterior uveitis, what are we going to see? See, uveitis, first we will learn about anterior uveitis. So in the anterior uveitis, first if you see in the conjunctiva, we see something called as circumcorneal congestion, that is congestion present around the cornea, not in the cornea but around the cornea, that is circumcorneal congestion. And there will be corneal edema present in the cornea. Okay, in the cornea we have a triangle which is called as Earle's triangle, which is seen at the base, and this Earle's triangle consists of some keratic precipitates. What are these keratic precipitates? These are the proteinaceous deposits present at the base of the cornea. At the back of the cornea, there are some proteinaceous deposits which are seen, which are called as keratic precipitates. These keratic precipitates are mainly divided into mutton fat keratic precipitate, small and medium keratic precipitate, red keratic precipitate, and old keratic precipitate. According to mutton fat keratic precipitate consists of epithelioid cells and macrophages. It is a granulomatous type of keratic precipitates. Then we have small and medium keratic precipitate consisting of lymphocytes. This is non-granulomatous keratic precipitates. Then we have red keratic precipitate consisting of RBC, and it is mainly due to hemorrhagic. So in mutton fat keratic precipitates there are epithelioid cells and macrophages, which is granulomatous. In small and medium keratic precipitates we have lymphocytes, which is non-granulomatous cells. Then we have red keratic precipitates which contain RBC, which is due to hemorrhage. So that is keratic precipitates present in cornea. Then if you see in the aqueous in the anterior chamber, in what are the features that occur in anterior chamber? In anterior chamber we have some aqueous cells, and these aqueous cells are actually the early feature of uveitis. So these aqueous cells can be seen in oblique slit lamp, and we have gradings for these aqueous cells. These aqueous cells are given the grading of 0 to more than 50, that is minus to plus 4. Minus is no cells are seen, plus or minus is 1 to 5 cells are seen, plus 1 if 6 cells are seen, plus 2 if 11 to 20 cells are seen, plus 3 if 21 to 50 cells are seen, plus 4 if more than 50 cells are seen. See, minus if no cells are seen, plus or minus 1 to 5 cells are seen, plus 1 that is 6 to 10 cells are seen, plus 2 that is 11 to 20 cells are seen, plus 3 that is 20 to 21 to 50 cells are seen, plus 4 that is more than 50 cells are seen. This is for aqueous cells early future. Then we have one more thing, which is hypopyon. Hypopyon is presence of what do you call it? Hypopyon. Hypopyon is presence of pus in the anterior chamber, is hypopyon is seen. Then we have hyphema, that is congestion of the anterior chamber. Then we have one more thing about aqueous in aqueous humor, that is in anterior chamber there is aqueous flare. This aqueous flare is mainly due to the disruption of blood of aqueous chamber and increase in protein content. This aqueous flare is due to disruption of blood aqueous barrier and increase in protein content. This has again 4 gradings. No is there is 0, no aqueous flare. If there is plus 1 aqueous flare, then it is just. If plus 2 aqueous flare, that is moderate, plus 3 aqueous flare for marked, and plus 4 aqueous flare for high. Then we have iris signs. So in the iris signs we have different types of iris signs. One, we have this one which is called as Busacca nodule. Busacca nodule is present near the collarette. Okay, then we have Kopis nodule. This Kopis nodule is present near the pupillary border. Busacca nodule is present near the collarette, whereas Kopis nodule is present near the pupillary border. The iris becomes mud colored, and there is change in the pattern of iris is seen, and sometimes there is neovascularization of iris called as rubiosis iridis is seen. Sometimes you can even see posterior synechiae can also be seen sometimes, which can be segmental or annular or total. Sometimes there is formation of posterior synechiae also. Then if you see the pupillary changes, first change is sluggish pupillary reaction. Later you can see narrow pupil and irregular pupil. There is formation of posterior synechiae. This posterior synechiae, if you give atropine, it forms irregular dilatation, which will form festooned pupil. Festooned pupil is this type of irregular dilated pupil is festooned pupil. Okay, that is one thing. Next, this 360 degree synechiae will cause occlusion of this occlusion of flow of aqueous humor from posterior chamber, chamber to anterior chamber. So as a result, there is formation of first seclusio pupillae, which progress into occlusio pupillae, where there is complete block of flow of aqueous humor from posterior chamber to the anterior chamber, and there is pupillary block. So as a result, there is no drainage of aqueous humor. So this, because of no drainage of aqueous humor, this leads to the formation of secondary complicated cataract. That is one. And this will also lead to bulging of iris forward. When the iris bulges forward, it leads to formation of iris bombae. This iris bombae will look like funnel shaped anterior chamber, which is nothing but secondary angle closure glaucoma. It leads to a secondary angle closure glaucoma. So this uveitis will lead to secondary angle closure glaucoma, and it will lead to secondary complicated cataract also. Then, so the same thing I have put in the pictures format, where you see keratin precipitates in cornea. This is also a keratin precipitate. In the anterior chamber we have aqueous flare, aqueous cells. These are the muddy iris will be there. At the collarette we have Brusaka nodule, and Kopis nodule is present at the pupillary border. We have cyclitic membrane, which is inflammatory membrane formed behind the iris. In Arl's triangle, keratic precipitates are seen in the lower half of this area. Then we have the same thing again. This is Kopis nodule at pupillary border, Brusaka nodule present in here. And one more important thing is Brusaka nodule is seen in non-granulomatous uveitis, whereas Kopis nodule is seen in granulomatous uveitis. So posterior synechiae result in ring synechiae, pupillary border sticks onto the lens, and it is called as seclusio pupillae also. And slowly there is formation of fibrous membrane over the lens, forming occlusio pupillae. So here the thing which you have to learn is this non-granulomatous uveitis is Kopers nodules. Cosper nodule will form non-granulomatous uveitis. Brusaka nodules are due to granulomatous uveitis. Then one more important thing is we have posterior synechiae which form ring synechiae. Okay, this ring synechiae will form seclusio pupillae. This seclusio pupillae will form occlusio pupillae. Occlusio pupillae is when the whole lens surface is filled with fibrous material. It forms occlusio pupillae. Then what is the drug of choice for anterior uveitis? Drug of choice for anterior uveitis is topical steroids. Topical steroids are the drug of choice for anterior uveitis. And we also have topical cycloplegics can also be used. So in topical cycloplegics, this will give rest to the ciliary membranes, ciliary muscle. So topical cycloplegics will give rest to the ciliary muscles. They will relieve pain and prevent posterior synechiae formation. Then most important sign of aqueous inflammation is most common sign or most important sign of active inflammation is aqueous cells. Aqueous cells are the most important sign of active inflammation. Then we have something called as LUMINATE program. This LUMINATE program is a study to find out non-steroidal treatment of anterior uveitis. This is a study to find non-steroidal treatment of anterior uveitis, and this is called as LUMINATE program. There is Voclosporin. Voclosporin is studied, which is a neuromodulator. Voclosporin is a immunomodulator which is studied in this LUMINATE program. Then how are you going to diagnose this? Diagnosis is we will have to do hematology, that is all the serology for antibodies you can do, C-reactive protein, TLC, DLC, ESR, all those routine investigations you should do. And then the treatment is mainly, as I have said, you can use cycloplegic drugs can be used. In the cycloplegic drugs we can use 1% atropine sulfate or eye ointment. In this we can use 1% atropine sulfate eye ointment. Cyclopentolate can be used. But what is the drug of choice? Drug of choice is corticosteroids. For anterior uveitis, the drug of choice is corticosteroids. Then for systemic we can use corticosteroids for like prednisolone can be used, or you can use aspirin, or immunosuppressive drugs like cyclophosphamide and chloramphenicol can also be used. Immunosuppressive drugs like cyclophosphamide and chloramphenicol can be used. Then if you see physical measures include, we can use hot fermentation or goggles for treatment of cause and complications. Then drugs not used to control intraocular pressure spikes is PG analogs or pilocarpine. You cannot use these drugs to control the intraocular pressure spikes in uveitis, are mainly we cannot use prostaglandin analogs and pilocarpines. What are the complications? Complications I have already told you in the pathogenesis only clearly. The complications are, we have complicated cataract, it causes secondary glaucoma, it causes cyclitic membrane, choroiditis, there can be retinal complications associated with it, papillitis can be seen, rubeosis iridis or iris atrophy can be seen. Sometimes it can also cause phthisis bulbi. It can also cause phthisis bulbi. Then the hallmark of uveitis is keratic precipitates are the hallmark of uveitis. Then we have to learn about intermediate uveitis. So what is seen in intermediate uveitis? Here mostly you see a young male. There will be young male with unilateral blurring of vision is seen. Here young male with unilateral blurring of vision is seen in intermediate uveitis. So here you will see presence, important things here are, you will see presence of inflammatory membrane over the pars plana. You will see presence of inflammatory membrane over the pars plana, that is called as snow banking. Inflammatory membrane over the pars plana is called as snow banking. And we have something called as snowballs. These snowballs are nothing but inflammatory white exudates which are floating in vitreous are snowballs. Snowballs are inflammatory white exudates floating on the vitreous are called as snowballs. And we also have retrolental flare, right? Then this intermediate uveitis is a self-limiting disease. Then the treatment is here, if the vision is less than 6/12, then we have something called as four-step approach. Okay, so what do you see in this four-step approach is important. So first, in the four-step approach, first we will start with local steroids. Okay, this local steroids, in this we give subcutaneous injection of triamcinolone acetate is given. We give subcutaneous injection of triamcinolone acetate. Then we give, second step is, if with this the inflammation is subsided, it is well and good. But if with this inflammation is not subsided, then we go to systemic steroids and we give systemic steroids. Then after that we give cryotherapy should be given. In cryotherapy, this cryotherapy will damage the blood supply of inflammatory membrane. This will damage the blood supply of inflammatory membrane. And there is pars plana vitrectomy can also occur. It can also cause pars plana vitrectomy. That is, there is decreased blurring of vision and it responds better to steroids. So this is the four approaches which you, steps which you have to do for this intermediate uveitis. Then after intermediate uveitis, we have posterior uveitis, or also called as choroiditis. So this posterior uveitis, it can be, the etiological features are, it can be suppurative, okay, or it can be non-suppurative. In non-suppurative causes, we have, it can be diffuse. So diffuse includes, it can be due to tuberculosis or syphilis. It can be disseminated. In disseminated, many but small, or it can spread over a larger area. So if it spreads over a larger area, then that is disseminated. It can be TB and syphilis. It can be circumscribed or local or focal, localized or focal. Here if it is circumscribed, it involves one or few smaller patches, that is circumscribed. Then it can be central. In central, it includes macula mainly. Okay, it is mainly caused by toxoplasmosis, histoplasma and TB. For central, which includes macula, mainly it is caused by toxoplasma, histoplasma and tuberculosis. It can be juxtacecal, that is surrounding the optic disc. In this, it can be Jensen's choroiditis. It can include Jensen's choroiditis. Then it can be anterior peripheral also. If it's anterior peripheral, as the name says, it involves the peripheral part of choroid and it is seen in syphilis. Then we have equatorial. In the equatorial, it might include the equatorial region. Okay, so this is classification of posterior uveitis. So in the posterior uveitis we see features like photopsia, metamorphopsia, features like photopsia, metamorphopsia, micropsia, macropsia, black spots which are floating, positive scotoma, defective vision are seen as clinical features. And non-specifically we can use systemic corticosteroids can be used. So if you see in posterior uveitis we see choroiditis. So what are we going to see in posterior uveitis? We can see things like choroiditis, vitritis, papillitis, cystoid macular edema, which is the most common posterior segment manifestation that decreases vision, is cystoid macular edema. You can see retinal edema, and you can also see periphlebitis. So the symptoms we have done, the lesions included in posterior uveitis are choroiditis, vitritis, papillitis. We have cystoid macular edema, retinal edema, and periphlebitis are the things in lesions which are involved in posterior uveitis. Yeah, the treatment of posterior uveitis is local steroids. So now, before going into the types of the uveitis, we have learnt about anterior posterior uveitis. So I would like to just give some examples, give some pictures of uveitis. Okay, that is anterior and posterior intermediate uveitis. So these are the different pictures of uveitis. I label all the features of uveitis. So in this, first we are seeing about anterior uveitis. Okay, in the anterior uveitis, first you have, okay, so first in this, if you see, you can see the circumcorneal congestion, right? You can see the circumcorneal congestion in this conjunctiva, and here this is, what is this? Hypopyon. You can see hypopyon here. Okay, next in this picture you can see clearly, if you can see, this is the Arl's line with these precipitates which are keratic precipitates. You can see keratic precipitates with Arl's line. Okay, in this picture. Okay, here in this picture, if you can see, this is a slit lamp picture showing cells in the aqueous chamber. Okay, this is a slit lamp picture showing aqueous flare. Here you can see aqueous flare, here you can see cells in the aqueous chamber. Then here in the collarette, around the collarette, you can see the Busacca nodule. See, all these nodular structures are Busacca nodules. Okay, if you see here in the pupillary border, these structures, these rounds which you can see here, these are the Koppes nodules at the pupillary margin, right? And here, this is seclusio pupillae, where there is pupillary obstruction. Here this is festooned pupillae. So if you add to this seclusio pupillae, if you give atropine, then you will see this festooned pupillae. So this is occlusio pupillae, where the pupillary surface has been, over the pupillary surface you will see the fibrous membrane. See, this is the fibrous membrane which is formed over the pupillary membrane. So this is occlusio pupillae. Okay, these are the for anterior uveitis. Then we have these two, mainly for intermediate uveitis. These two are for intermediate uveitis. So here if you can see, these are the balls. This is choroid. In the choroid, these ball like structures which you can see are snowballs. Okay, and in the pars plana you can see this banking, which is snow banking. Okay, similarly here you can see vitreous cells in the vitreous humor. You can see chorioretinal scarring. This is vitreous haze. These are the snowballs, and this is snow banking. These are the features of intermediate uveitis. This is posterior uveitis showing multifocal choroiditis, right? Next we have something called as onchocerciasis. So what is onchocerciasis? This is river blindness which is caused by Onchocerca volvulus. which is river blindness. Onchocerciasis is river blindness caused by Onchocerca volvulus. It is mainly non-granulomatous. It is mainly non-granulomatous anterior uveitis. This onchocerciasis is present in Vision 2020 program, and the treatment for onchocerciasis which we give is ivermectin is the treatment which we give for onchocerciasis. Then we have something called as ophthalmia nodosum. So what is this ophthalmia nodosum? This is intense granulomatous infection which you see, and here you see a nodule in iris. Why is this ophthalmia nodosum seen? It is because of caterpillar hair. Whenever caterpillar hair goes into the eyes, then we have this ophthalmia nodosa occurring. So this is the picture of ophthalmia nodosum, where you can see these nodule like structures which are seen. This is ophthalmia nodosum. Sorry, actually the nodule should be in iris, but I could not find the picture. Okay, next the same thing, but we will see the causes of uveitis. So causes of uveitis can be anterior uveitis, intermediate uveitis, and posterior uveitis. So anterior uveitis, most commonly we have HBLA. So anterior uveitis can occur due to HLA-B27, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, Fuchs ankylosing spondylitis. Intermediate uveitis can occur due to candidiasis. Posterior uveitis can occur due to viral infections, cytomegalovirus, HIV, and and toxoplasma. Then pan uveitis. Pan uveitis can occur due to sarcoidosis, Vogt-Konayaga-Harady syndrome, tuberculosis, syphilis, sympathetic ophthalmia, HZV, Behçet's disease, toxoplasmosis, and in Lyme's disease, pan uveitis can occur. There can be granulomatous uveitis also. Granulomatous uveitis can occur in sarcoidosis, tuberculosis, most commonly in tuberculosis, syphilis, HSV, leprosy, von Konayaga-Harady syndrome, Lyme's disease, multiple sclerosis, brucellosis, sympathetic ophthalmitis. So in all these conditions we can see the granulomatous uveitis. Then first we will see about HLA-B27, that is ankylosing spondylitis. So in HLA-B27, the uveitis which we get is non-granulomatous anterior uveitis. The features are almost similar. This HLA-B27 is Rh negative, that is seronegative arthropathies. Okay, so we have three types of three types which are involving eyes. We have psoriatic arthropathy, Reiter syndrome, and ankylosing spondylitis. In ankylosing spondylitis you see recurrent anterior uveitis, and the other features like back pain, anthesitis at sacroiliac joint are seen, which are features of ankylosing spondylitis. In this you will also see triad of uveitis, conjunctivitis, and arthritis. Triad is seen in Reiter syndrome. Okay, so there is also keratoderma blennorrhagica seen in Reiter syndrome. All this we will see in rheumatology anyways. What is really important in this is, in the ankylosing spondylitis there is presence of recurrent anterior uveitis is seen in ankylosing spondylitis. Next we have HLA-B5 disease, which is Behçet's syndrome. In this Behçet syndrome, that is HLA-B5, the patient presents with bilateral non-granulomatous pan uveitis. It is similar to the same features which I have already shown you. Okay, here the main thing is, here there is pan uveitis which is non-granulomatous. Okay, this is also associated with hypopyon, and this hypopyon is transiently mobile sometimes. Okay, you see oral ulcers. There can be other features of Behçet disease like erythema multiforme can also be seen. Then we have something called as juvenile chronic arthritis. This juvenile chronic arthritis is also called as white eye uveitis. We have white eye uveitis. So in this juvenile chronic arthritis, it can be divided into pauciarticular, polyarticular, or systemic. In pauciarticular, only less than 5 joints are involved in pauciarticular. Then it can be polyarticular, where more than 5 joints are involved. Or it can be systemic, that is Still's disease, which includes hepatosplenomegaly. If you see complications of juvenile chronic arthritis, it is associated with band-shaped keratopathy, complicated cataract, festooned pupil due to posterior synechiae are seen. So it is actually non-granulomatous anterior uveitis, but it has increased side effects of increased complications of complicated cataract and band-shaped keratopathy are seen in juvenile chronic arthritis, and intraocular lens insertion is avoided after cataract surgery in this situation, because if you implant or insert intraocular lens in these patients, this will cause increased risk of severe inflammatory reaction. In order to prevent it, you should avoid insertion of intraocular lens. Then the next thing which we have is Fuchs uveitis syndrome. In Fuchs uveitis syndrome, we have unilateral granulomatous anterior uveitis. Here you see unilateral non-granulomatous anterior uveitis is seen in this Fuchs uveitis syndrome. Here you see symptoms like complicated cataract. It is associated with complicated cataract, rubeosis iridis. Obviously there is aqueous flare, and you see diffuse stellate keratic precipitates are seen, which are white, and you will also see rupture of small vessels in angles, which is seen as hyphema, which is called as Amsler's sign. Amsler's sign is due to the rupture of small vessels in the angle. There is blood in the anterior chamber, which is called as Amsler's sign. So here you can see this. If you see here, you can see red colored, this red color deposit which you can see, that is hyphema, that is blood in the anterior chamber. This is called as Amsler's sign. Okay, the next disorder or lesion which we have to see is Posner-Skålman syndrome or hypertensive uveitis. In this Posner-Skålman syndrome or hypertensive uveitis, this contains glaucomatocyclitic crisis. This Posner-Skålman in this Posner-Skålman syndrome, it mainly contains glaucomatocyclitic crisis, and here we have anterior recurrent unilateral uveitis with increased intraocular pressure. Here there is open angle glaucoma and anterior recurrent uveitis. So here it is glaucoma, it might present as uveitis. That is the reason why we call it as hypertensive uveitis, because it is presenting as glaucoma. So here the treatment is, first you will have to treat the glaucoma. You can use the topical steroid, can be used as drug of choice for glaucoma, and for decreasing the intraocular pressure we can use alpha agonist. So this is about Posner-Skålman syndrome. Then if you see, we have something called as sarcoidosis. In this sarcoidosis we see bilateral glaucomatous panuveitis is seen. So because it is panuveitis, it includes both anterior, intermediate and posterior uveitis. Okay, so here you see mutton fat keratic precipitates because it is granulomatous lesion. We have two syndromes associated with sarcoidosis, which are Löfgren syndrome and Hereford syndrome. In Löfgren syndrome, here we mainly see a triad of skin condition, bilateral hilar lymphadenopathy and polyarthritis, whereas in Hereford syndrome you see eye changes like uveitis, parotiditis, corneal nerve palsy, skin rash, fever is seen in Hereford syndrome. In Hereford syndrome you see uveitis, parotiditis, cranial nerve palsies and skin rash and fever, right? So here what are you going to see here? Here you see periphlebitis, that is inflammation of veins. You see presence of retinal nodules. These retinal nodules are called as Landers nodules are seen. Presence of retinal nodules, that is Landers nodules are seen. You will see vitreous snowball opacities are seen here, and you will also see perivenous exudates. These perivenous exudates are called as candle wax drippings or Entachys d Boughey. You see candle wax drip or Entachys d Boughey are seen here. Okay, you see periphlebitis, perivenous exudate and candle wax drip, that is Entachys d Boughey is seen, and you see retinal nodules which are called as Landers nodules are seen. So here we have positive Queen's test is seen, abnormal chest x-ray, increased angiotensin converting enzyme, and steroids are used. I will show you the picture now. Yeah. So these are the pictures. So here where there is panuveitis. So you see anterior uveitis with granulomatous uveitis with mutton fat carotic precipitates are seen. So these are the multifocal. You can see multifocal chorioretinal lesions are seen. Here you see candle wax drippings which are seen and sarcoid vasculitis. Even here you can see these nodules and sarcoid and you can see candle wax drippings also. Okay, so this is about the sarcoidosis. Then we have something called as Vogt-Konayaga-Harada syndrome. In Vogt-Konayaga-Harada syndrome, it is HLA-DR4. Here there is bilateral granulomatous panuveitis. Here you see bilateral granulomatous panuveitis. Here we have three types of lesions. One, in uveitis we have bilateral granulomatous panuveitis, and we also have tinnitus, encephalopathy, meningism, deafness and vertigo associated with it. We have cutaneous lesions like poliosis, vitiligo and alopecia are also present. You can see multiple areas of retinal exudates. Exudative retinal detachment is seen. You can see multiple areas of exudative retinal detachment is seen. And you have something, a sign which is called as Sugura's sign is seen. In Sugura's sign, there is perilimbal vitiligo is seen in Sugura's sign. That is perilimbal vitiligo or whitening is seen, which is called as Sugura's sign. And here you will also see the nodules which are called as Dallen-Fuchs nodules are also associated with it, where you see granulomas present between retina and choroid. You have Dallen-Fuchs nodules which are seen where there is granulomas present between retina and choroid. And we also have sunset glow fundus is also seen, which includes degenerative areas are seen in sunset glow fundus. So these are the things which you see. I'll show you the picture, just a minute. So these are the fundus pictures for Vogt-Konayaga-Harada syndrome. So I'll just label all these so that you will understand. So this is the degenerative area. See, all these which you are seeing here are nothing but degenerative areas which are seen in the fundus, and this is called as sunset sign. Okay, here these nodules which you are seeing are nothing but the Dallen-Fuchs nodules which you can see. So this is the OCT picture of Dallen-Fuchs nodules. Okay, fluorescent angiography picture, sorry, it is fluorescent angiography picture of Dallen-Fuchs nodules. Then here we have Segura sign. What is Segura sign? Segura sign is perilimbal vitiligo. So around the limbus there is vitiligo, whitening. See, this is a little whitened when compared to this skin color. See, color of this and this, if you compare, this has been a little whitened, right? So that is Segura sign, where there is perilimbal whitening is seen. Okay, so that is the features of Segura syndrome. Then we have something called as sympathetic ophthalmitis. So what do you see in sympathetic ophthalmitis? In sympathetic ophthalmitis we have two types of eye. One is exciting eye, second we have sympathetic eye. In exciting eye, because of the injury there is congestion is seen, and in sympathetic eye Because of this exciting eye, the inflammatory mediators are also released in the sympathetic eye, thus causing sympathetic ophthalmitis. Here it is mainly associated with bilateral granulomatous uveitis, and this sympathetic eye mostly occurs 3 to 12 weeks after injury. The first symptom that you see in sympathetic ophthalmitis is blurring of vision, whereas the first sign that is seen is, you see, retrolental flare is the first sign seen. Okay, first symptom seen is blurring of vision, whereas first sign seen is retrolental flare. And there is, the treatment is, we can do enucleation, and we have Dallen-Fox nodules are present, granules are present, which are yellowish white subretinal granulomas are seen, which are Dallen-Fox granules. So this also contains Dallen-Fox granules here, and Dallen-Fox nodules here are almost same. Okay, then if you see, the next important thing is about toxoplasmosis. This toxoplasmosis is caused by Toxoplasma gondii. In children, it is caused by Toxocara. The definitive host of toxoplasmosis is cat. Okay, here you mainly see it is mainly made up of unilateral anterior or posterior uveitis. Here what do you see? What are the main features? Main features are, you see, hazy view due to vitreous or vitritis, and there is focal necrotizing retinochoroiditis is seen, and this will give a headlight in fog appearance, and it will also result in formation of inactive scar. There is yellowish white area of infiltration near the margin of old scar within the hazy vitreous, that is, there is inactive scar which is seen. Okay, so here there is 3 types of toxoplasmosis are present. We have congenital or transplacental congenital toxoplasmosis, which is acquired by transplacental route. It consists of triad of convulsions, chorioretinitis, and intracranial hemorrhage. So mainly in the eye you see chorioretinitis, and first inactive lesions are retinochoroiditis, and inactive lesions are chorioretinal scars are seen. If you see acquired, in acquired it is acquired by eating undercooked meat. Here mainly you see punctuate outer retinal toxoplasmosis. This is the main eye lesions. Then if you see recurrent or very common, recurrent which is very commonly seen, and here this is the place where you see this focal necrotizing choroiditis adjacent to inactive scar. Okay, so this is the classic lesion, that is focal necrotizing choroiditis near the adjacent scar. Then I'll just show you the picture of it. So these are the pictures of toxoplasmosis. Okay, where you see this headlight in fog appearance. Even this is headlight in fog appearance fundus picture, and here you see necrotizing focal. This is focal only involving this part. You see it has been brown color, so it is necrotizing. Chorioretinitis is seen here. Okay, even this is chorioretinitis which you can see. This arrowhead is showing chorioretinal scar. See, even this is chorioretinal scarring. Okay, so this is toxoplasmosis. Then after toxoplasmosis we have HIV associated uveitis. So what do you see in HIV associated uveitis? This HIV associated uveitis, it mainly involves bilateral non-granulomatous panuveitis. What is the most common manifestation? Most common manifestation is there is retinal microangiopathy which shows cotton wool spots, and most common opportunistic eye infection is CMV retinopathy, where you see brush fire retinopathy, pizza pie appearance, or bread cheese appearance. Most common fungal infection in AIDS is Cryptococcus neoformans. Sometimes ophthalmia nodosum, which I have already told you, that can also occur or associated with HIV. Okay, I'll just show you the picture, just a minute. So here you can see this is a picture showing CMV retinitis. Okay, where you can see hemorrhage, which you see there are scattered hemorrhages are seen, and this scattered hemorrhages gives the appearance of there is focal fluffy retinal infiltrates and necrosis with scattered hemorrhage. It creates the appearance of scrambled egg or ketchup and pizza pie appearance in CMV. Even this is cytomegalovirus retinitis. Even this is cytomegalovirus retinitis. Then if you see, we have tubercular uveitis. The next type of uveitis is, so in this tubercular uveitis mostly we see anterior uveitis, where in the anterior uveitis you see miliary tubercular iritis or conglomerate granuloma, or there can be posterior uveitis where we can see multiple miliary tubercles are seen in the choroid, or there can be diffuse multifocal choroiditis, or there can be choroidal granuloma which is associated with tuberculosis, or sometimes tuberculosis is associated with a vascular disease called as Eil's disease. Next we have syphilitic uveitis. So in the syphilitic uveitis, this is an acquired syphilitic uveitis which has anterior uveitis, and this syphilitic uveitis is made up of both anterior and posterior uveitis. So in the anterior uveitis there is anterior iritis, acute iritis is present, and there is also gum matus anterior uveitis are also present. Here in gum matus anterior uveitis, one important thing is there is reddish yellowish red multiple nodules in the ciliary and pupillary borders of iris are seen. This is the only important feature in syphilitic uveitis. Then we have the next type of uveitis, which is called as leprotic uveitis. So in this leprotic uveitis we have two types of leprotic uveitis. One, we have acute iritis. It mainly occurs due to antigen and antibody deposition, and we also have granulomatous iritis. This granulomatous iritis occurs due to direct organismal invasion, and there is formation of iris pearls near the pupillary margin in necklace form. So if you see in this picture, you can see the iris pearls which are seen. See, I'll just show you. These are the nodules which are black colored, which are seen around, right? So these are the iris pearls which are seen near the pupillary margin. Okay, that is in leprosy. Then we have something called as toxocariasis or Toxocara canis or Toxocara catis. This is mainly acquired by contaminated ova or dirt. So in this we have first Toxocara chronic endophthalmitis is present. So in Toxocara chronic endophthalmitis, it is mainly includes leukocoria, that is vitreous clouding is seen. It is seen in the age group of 2 to 10 years. Okay, then we have one more, posterior pole granuloma. In posterior pole granuloma mainly occurs at the age of 5 to 19 years of age. Here you see yellowish white raised solitary nodule is seen at the nodule or macula or centrocecal area. Here in this you see yellowish white round solitary raised nodule which is seen at the macula or centrocecal area. Okay, so this is posterior granuloma. We also have one more thing which is called as peripheral granuloma, where there is vitreous bands formation are seen anterior to equator. So in toxocariosis we have toxocaric chronic endophthalmitis, we have posterior pole granuloma, we have peripheral granuloma also associated with toxocariasis. Next we will learn about ocular histoplasmosis. So this ocular histoplasmosis, so if you see, this is the pictures of Toxocara. Okay, so in this you can see this is posterior pole granuloma. This is the picture of posterior pole granuloma, and this is the picture of posterior granuloma. This is the picture of posterior granuloma, which you can see here in this picture. This I don't have an idea, but here you can see posterior granuloma. So this is Toxocara. Next, after Toxocara, we have something called as ocular histoplasmosis. Okay, in the ocular histoplasmosis we have this is mainly caused by Histoplasma capsulatum. Here what do you see? You see two things. One, you see histospots. These are round, these are histospots which are round atrophic. These are round atrophic yellowish white spots in the mid retinal periphery, and these are the scars of disseminated histoplasma choroiditis. Then we also have macular lesion. These macular lesions include, first there is atrophic macular scar. This atrophic macular scar causes hole in the Bruch's membrane. Through this hole there is ingrowth of capillaries. Okay, these capillaries will form subretinal neovascularization. As a result, there is leakage of fluid into the neovascular membrane, leading to serous detachment, and finally it causes hemorrhagic detachment. Okay, so this is macular lesion which you can see. So I have pictures for this also. So 1 minute, this is the picture. You can't tell it actually has posterior granuloma, but it is a picture of Toxocara only. Then if you see, this is ocular histoplasmosis. This is ocular histoplasmosis, where you can see these spots are histospots which you can see here. Okay, and here you can see this type of detachment and scarring is seen here. So this is ocular histoplasmosis. Then the next disorder is about the candidiasis. So in the candidiasis, first we have important things about candidiasis is we have anterior uveitis and hypopyon. It can present as multifocal chorioretinitis, or it can present as candida ophthalmitis, endophthalmitis. In candida endophthalmitis, you see vitreous exudates where you see puffball or cotton ball colonies of candida can be seen, and you will also have string of pearl appearance of exudative strands. All the exudates will form strand like structures resembling the string of pearl appearance. In multifocal chorioretinitis, you see hemorrhages and Roth spots. Hemorrhages with pale center, that is Roth spots. Then I'll show you the pictures also. Just let me complete these also. In herpes zoster ophthalmicus, we see mainly anterior uveitis. Okay, that is mild iritis with vesicular eruption on the tip of the nose is seen. This anterior uveitis is mainly non-granulomatous iridocyclitis with small keratic precipitates and mild aqueous flare. Then in the herpes simplex uveitis, if you see, in this we mainly have dendritic or geographic corneal ulcer, but in uveitis we have mainly acute retinal necrosis is seen. Okay, so let me just show you the pictures of these also here itself. So if you see, these are the pictures of candida uveitis. So it is candida. So if you see, I have told you that in candida you have three types of uveitis, which is anterior uveitis. Anterior uveitis I did not bring any picture because it is similar to any type of uveitis. Second, we have Roth spots. Third, we have string of pearl appearance. So here this is the Roth spot. What is Roth spot? In the retina, you see central pale area surrounded by the hemorrhage. So this is pale area surrounded by hemorrhage. So that is Roth spot which you can see, and these are the fluffy balls which you can see, and these fluffy balls, the exudates will form string of pearl appearance. I know, but I didn't get the string of pearl appearance properly. but here this, these, see, these are something forming string of pearl appearance. Okay, but it's not visible properly, but these exudates are nothing but fluffy balls which are seen in candidiasis. Okay, so this is about candidiasis. So see, these are the vitreous exudates present as fluffy balls or cotton ball like, and you can see dot spots in multifocal chorioretinitis. Then we have something called as multiple evanescent white dot syndrome. It is nothing but ocular histoplasmosis. I have already shown you this picture, right, of ocular histoplasmosis. And we have cytomegalovirus retinitis also. I have shown you this picture with hemorrhagic areas, pizza pie or tomato ketchup appearance. So this is about the cytomegalovirus retinitis. So this completes the discussion for uveitis. So thank you guys for watching my lecture. In the next class we will learn about scleritis. Thank you.